There's a symbol that appears in every Masonic temple, a symbol that sparks confusion, speculation, conspiracy theories. The letter G, inside the compass and square, surrounded by rays of light, at the center of everything. And when you ask a Mason what it means, they give you multiple answers: geometry, God, Gnosis, Genesis, generation, and all of them are correct, but all of them are fragments of a larger truth. A truth that Thoth the Atlantean taught in the Halls of Amenti 36,000 years before Freemasonry existed. He said, "There exists a force within the human being that precedes all action, that directs all energy, that generates all reality." The Masons call it G. Thoth called it the generative force, the principle of care. In this video, you're going to discover why this force is the secret behind all manifestation, how mastering the G is mastering life itself, and why you're already using this force right now, whether you know it or not. But before I reveal what the G really is, you need to understand something fundamental. You were taught that action comes from willpower, that decisions come from logic, that behavior comes from rational choice. But Thoth taught the opposite. He said, all action comes from care. You only act upon what you care about, and what you care about completely determines the reality you generate. And this changes everything. Thoth the Atlantean, master of the builders, the one who taught humans the art of erecting pyramids, not just of stone but of consciousness, revealed something profound. He said, the entire universe is mental construction. Everything that exists began as thought, and thought only becomes form when energized by something deeper than reason. That something is the G, the generative force, the principle of care. And here's what few understand: you don't act on what you think. You act on what you care about. Let me prove this to you right now. You've probably thought 1,000 times, I should go to the gym. You thought it. You logically recognized it would be good. But you didn't go. Why? Because thinking isn't enough. You need to care enough to act. You've also probably thought, I should eat healthier. You thought it. You rationally agreed. But you didn't change. Why? Because you didn't care enough. But there are things in your life you do effortlessly, without reminders, without external discipline. Why? Because you care deeply. If you care about someone you love, you act. You call, you help, you show up, without effort. If you care about a project, you work on it. You think about it. You sacrifice other things for it. And if you care about an addiction, you feed it. You seek it. You return to it. Thoth taught, care is the force that moves the world. Not thought, not abstract willpower, but deep, emotional, visceral care. This is the G, and it's operating in you now, every single second. Now here's something fascinating about Freemasonry that few understand. Freemasonry is not a secret society of conspirators controlling the world. That's distraction, fantasy. True Freemasonry, esoteric Freemasonry, is a school of inner construction, and the central symbol is stonemasonry. The work with stone. But which stone? Not physical stone, mental stone, the rough stone that is your unrefined mind. And the work is to chisel, polish, perfect this stone until it becomes the cornerstone, the philosopher's stone, and the G is at the center of this process. Because you cannot sculpt yourself without caring deeply about the process, without loving the transformation, without valuing the result more than you value comfort. Thoth taught that all true initiation is self-initiation. And all self-initiation begins with redirecting care. From caring about the external, the temporary, the superficial, to caring about the internal, the eternal, the profound. And when this redirection happens, everything changes. Think about this for a second. If you start caring deeply about your consciousness, you'll act differently. You'll meditate, you'll study, you'll observe your thoughts, you'll refine your mind. If you start caring deeply about your health, you'll act differently. You'll eat better. You'll move your body. You'll sleep adequately. If you start caring deeply about your mission, you'll act differently. You'll work more focused. You'll eliminate distractions. You'll sacrifice lesser pleasures for greater purpose. The G is not just a symbol. It's an operational force. It's the invisible engine behind all manifestation. Now comes the part that Masons encode in symbols, but Thoth taught directly. The G is the 7th letter of the alphabet. And 7 is not an accident, it's code. Thoth taught that the human mind operates through 7 cognitions. 7 modes of processing reality, 7 layers of consciousness. And mastering the 7 is the path to mastery. The first cognition is perception, the capacity to receive impressions, to see beyond the obvious, to notice what's hidden. Thoth said, "Most people see, but they don't perceive. They look, but they don't observe." Developing refined perception is the first step. The second cognition is interpretation, the capacity to give meaning to what you perceive, to organize impressions into patterns. But here's the danger. You can interpret through ego or through higher consciousness, and the interpretation you choose determines the reality you experience. Thoth warned, if you interpret everything through fear, you'll see threats everywhere. If you interpret through love, you'll see opportunities. The third cognition is imagination, the capacity to form mental images, to visualize, to create on the astral plane before manifesting on the physical plane. And here's the secret. Imagination is not empty fantasy. It's the vehicle through which thought prepares to become form. Thoth taught, everything that exists in the physical world was first imagined. The pyramid existed in the architect's mind before it existed in stone. If you want to create something, you must first see it clearly in imagination. And the clearer the image, the stronger the manifestation. The fourth cognition is emotion, the energy that gives intensity to thought, that magnetizes imagination, that propels action. Thoth said, thought without emotion is sterile, emotion without thought is chaotic. But thought united with emotion is creative power. And here's where the G enters. Emotion comes from care. You only feel intensely about what you care deeply about. If you care about someone, you feel love. If you care about an injustice, you feel anger. If you care about an outcome, you feel anxiety or excitement. So care generates emotion, and emotion energizes manifestation. The fifth cognition is will, the capacity to direct energy consciously, to decide, to initiate, to sustain action. But here's what few understand. Will is not brute force. Will is focused care. You don't have lack of willpower. You have lack of sufficient care. When you care deeply enough, will arises naturally. You don't need to force yourself. You're pulled by the force of the G. The sixth cognition is memory, the storage of experiences, patterns, learnings, what shapes identity. Thoth taught, memory is not just personal. It connects to the Akashic records, to collective memory, to ancestral wisdom. And mastering memory is remembering not just what happened, but who you are beyond all experiences. The seventh cognition is intuition, direct knowledge, the voice of the soul, the guidance that comes from beyond rational mind. Thoth said, intuition is the highest cognition. It bypasses all logic and reveals truth directly, and intuition only speaks clearly when the other 6 cognitions are refined, when the mind is quiet, when ego doesn't interfere, and all 7 cognitions are energized by the G, by care, by the generative force. If you care deeply about knowing truth, your intuition strengthens. If you care superficially, your intuition dulls. Now comes the central truth that Thoth taught and that Masons encoded. Everything in the universe operates by the generative principle, the law of cause and effect. Nothing exists without cause, and every cause generates an effect, and every effect becomes a new cause. Creation is a continuous process. Reality is always unfolding. The universe is always becoming. And the motor of this process, the force that turns the wheel of creation, is the G. Let me give you practical examples. You plant a seed. You care for it, you water it, you protect it, and the plant grows. But if you stop caring, the plant dies. Care generates growth. Absence of care generates decay. You start a relationship. You care for the person, you give attention, you express love, and the relationship flourishes. But if you stop caring, the relationship withers. Care generates connection. Absence of care generates separation. You begin a project, you care for it, you dedicate time, you focus energy, and the project prospers. But if you stop caring, the project stagnates. Care generates manifestation. Absence of care generates dissolution. Thoth taught, the entire universe functions this way. Every galaxy, every planet, every atom exists because something cares for its existence. Something maintains it. Something sustains it. And in the microcosm, which is you, the same principle operates. What you care for grows. What you neglect dies. So the most important question you can ask is not, what do I want? The question is, what do I care enough about to nurture until it becomes reality? If you want something but don't care enough to act consistently on it, you won't manifest it. But if you care deeply, if the G is activated, manifestation is inevitable. Because care generates action, and sustained action generates results. Now comes something that Masons symbolize but rarely explain clearly. Why is the G surrounded by rays of light? Because the G is radiant force, its emanation. Just as the sun gives light and heat without asking anything in return, the true G gives without expecting reciprocity. Thoth taught, the highest love, the purest care, doesn't seek return. It simply emanates. The sun doesn't choose whom to shine upon. It shines for everyone, and its light makes everything grow. When your G operates at this level, when your care is selfless, when your generative force is not trapped in ego, but flows freely, you become a channel of creation. You don't just manifest for yourself. You become a source of manifestation for others. This is why great masters, great leaders, great creators don't just achieve, they elevate, they inspire, they generate growth around them, because the G in them is pure, it's radiant, it's unobstructed. But now comes the shadow side that needs to be said. The G doesn't judge, it just generates. If you care about elevated things, you generate elevated realities. If you care about destructive things, you generate destructive realities. Thoth warned, the G is neutral, it's force, and force can build or destroy depending on how it's directed. If someone cares deeply about revenge, the G will energize that, and actions of revenge will manifest. If someone cares deeply about addictions, the G will energize that, and the addiction will grow. If someone cares deeply about hatred, the G will energize that, and destruction will manifest. This is why Thoth taught purification before power. He said, before amplifying your generative force, purify what you care about, because amplifying impure care generates amplified chaos. So the work of the initiate, the true Masonic work, is to audit your own care. Where is your care energy going? What are you feeding with attention? What are you nurturing with thought? What are you sustaining with emotion? And then, consciously, redirect. Remove care from things that don't serve your highest good, and invest care in things that elevate you. This is not repression, it's wisdom. Thoth said, you have a finite amount of care energy. If you waste it on 100 superficial things, nothing profound manifests. But if you focus on a few essential things, miracles happen. Now comes the practical part, the part that changes everything if you apply it. How do you master the G? How do you take control of your generative force? Thoth left a protocol, simple but deeply transformative. First step, care inventory. For 7 days, write down everything you spend time, attention, and energy on. Everything. Social media, work, relationships, hobbies, worries, fantasies, everything. And beside each item, evaluate. Does this elevate me or lower me? Does this bring me closer to who I want to be or push me away? Second step, conscious elimination. Identify the 3 things that most drain your care without positive return, and remove them, or drastically reduce them. It could be a toxic person, it could be a destructive habit, it could be a mental obsession. Release that energy. Third step, intentional investment. Identify the 3 things that, if you cared more deeply about them, would transform your life. It could be health, it could be a skill, it could be an important relationship, it could be spiritual mission. And then, with the energy freed from step 2, invest in step 3. Care for these 3 things as if your life depended on it, because it does. Fourth step, daily ritual of G activation. Every morning, before anything else, close your eyes. Breathe deeply 3 times. And ask, what do I care deeply about today? What do I value above everything? And let the answer arise. Not from the mind, but from the heart. And then act based on that answer. If the answer is, I care about my evolution, then meditate, study, reflect. If the answer is I care about my family, then connect, serve, love. If the answer is I care about my mission, then work, create, manifest. And Thoth guaranteed, if you do this for 40 consecutive days, the G in you strengthens exponentially, and manifestation becomes natural. If you already feel this resonates, write in the comments, I activate the G. Now comes the final revelation that Thoth taught only in the deepest chambers of Amenti. He said, the G is not just a force within you, it's the force that sustains the entire universe. God begins with G, and it's not coincidence. Because God, in the Hermetic sense, is not an old bearded man in the sky judging. God is the universal generative force, the cosmic care that maintains all existence. The universe exists because something cares that it exists. Something sustains it. Something generates it moment by moment. And you, as an expression of this universe, carry the same G, the same generative force. You are, literally, God in miniature, creator on an individual scale. And when you master the G in you, when you align your care with universal care, when you become a conscious co-creator, you don't just manifest. You become living manifestation. You become a portal through which the divine expresses itself. And this, Thoth said, is the final goal of all initiation, not to have power, but to be power, not to control creation, but to flow with it, not to force manifestation, but to allow it to happen through you naturally. There's an ancient Masonic image that few deeply understand. It shows a temple with the G at the center, and from the temple, a path climbs a mountain toward the light. And Thoth revealed the hidden meaning. The temple is your body. The G at the center is your heart. The path is your journey. The mountain is the effort. And the light is Gnosis, direct knowledge. To reach the light, to obtain Gnosis, you must pass through the G. You must activate deep care. You must value truth more than comfort. You must love wisdom more than pleasure. And then you walk, and walking uphill is difficult, it's exhausting, it's painful. Most give up, because they don't care enough. But those who activate the G, those whose generative force is fully invested in ascension, they continue. And they reach the top, and the light receives them. And in that light, everything is revealed. Every mystery dissolves, every question finds its answer. Not because someone tells you, but because you see directly. This is Gnosis. Knowledge through experience, and Gnosis begins with G, because without caring deeply about knowing truth, you never make the necessary effort to reach it. So what do you do now? Now that you know the G, the generative force, the principle of care, is the secret behind all manifestation, you have a choice. Continue letting your care be hijacked by distractions, by addictions, by unconscious patterns, or take control. Audit your care, redirect your generative force, and consciously build the reality you desire. Thoth left the map, the Masons encoded it in symbol, and now you have the key. The G is not a letter, it's a living force operating in you now, and what you care for grows. So care wisely, because your entire life is a direct reflection of what you, consciously or unconsciously, care deeply about. And if something inside you recognized these words, if something resonated deeply, leave a sign in the comments. Just write, I am the G, because that's the final recognition. You don't just have the G, you are the G. You are generative force. You are creative principle. You are love in action. Thoth the Atlantean, master of the builders, who erected pyramids of stone and consciousness, taught that the secret is not complex. It's simple, profoundly simple. Care for what matters. And what matters will manifest. Neglect what matters. And even what you have will dissolve. The universe is generous. It gives you exactly what you care enough to nurture. So choose wisely, care deeply, and watch the G-force transform thought into form, intention into reality, potential into manifestation. As Thoth taught, as the Masons encoded, as the universe operates, the G is in you. It always has been. It always will be. The question is not whether you have the force. The question is, where do you direct it?